Many countries in the world today have modern train systems that are safe and efficient. However, there are still plenty of railway systems that operate on archaic technology and are by no means safe. Today we'll be taking a look at the top 15 most dangerous railways and trains on Earth. Number 15. Chennai Rameswaram Route. Rameswaram is one of the holiest places in India and naturally a huge tourist destination. Getting there by train is one of the most popular travel methods, but once they've reached their destination, it's not uncommon for foreigners to leave the train pale in the face. That's because the train passes over the harrowing Pamban Bridge. This bridge was built in 1914 right into the seabed of the Indian Ocean and is almost 2.5 kilometers long. The only problem is the bridge is often flooded by the seawater and can fall victim to some pretty serious high winds. Because of the potentially dangerous journey, the train can only travel a meager 15 miles an hour when going over the bridge. So if you're on board during a storm, you'll be in it for quite a while, assuming the weather doesn't cause the train to derail. And oddly enough, the locals will say that despite the rough waters, the best way to reach Rameswaram is still, instead, by boat. Number 14. Argo Gita Train Railroad. Indonesia is easily one of the most beautiful countries in the world, and the beautiful scenery makes it easy to see why the Indonesian people believe in such a mystical and spiritual school of thought. But there's something in Indonesia that will strike terror even into the most pious of hearts and spiritual people: the Argo Gita Train Railroad. This route connects the major Indonesian cities of Bandung and Jakarta. And while it may offer some pretty stunning views across the thick brush, it also provides for one of the scariest rides for those afraid of heights, as it runs along the Cikubang Bridge in West Java. This bridge is the longest bridge in Indonesia, at about 300 meters long, and it's held up by 4 steel pillars, each one weighing 110 tons. Built in 1906, the 100-plus-year-old bridge stands 80 meters above the bottom of the Cikubang River, where it's built into the riverbed. The entire trip takes about 3 hours, but of course the real fun begins when you reach the bridge. When you look down below, you'll see not just the beautiful subtropical valley, but an insanely long drop that'll turn your stomach into knots. Despite the danger of falling, though, the Cikubang Bridge is still one of the most popular Indonesian tourist attractions for those willing to take the risk. Number 13. Duffy's Cut. The next entry on our list stands out from the rest. Duffy's Cut in the United States doesn't cut through mountain ranges or travel above the sea during the storms, but it has its own appeal. In Pennsylvania in 1832, a railroad contractor hired 57 construction workers to build him a railway, and just 2 months later, all 57 men had died under mysterious circumstances. Their bodies were buried in a nearby gravesite along the railway. The locals and train drivers alike think that Duffy's Cut is haunted, the gravesite along the railway being a section that leaves everyone with a strange, uneasy, and downright unearthly feeling. Countless conductors and passengers have claimed to see people walking along the tracks, almost causing some serious accidents because of it. The story of Duffy's Cut made it a popular tourist attraction, but it also garnered the attention of researchers and archaeologists who found some pretty serious stuff during their 5-year excavation. Experts found that the 57 original workers had died violently, with some even being buried alive. Duffy's Cut continues to bring in train enthusiasts and ghost hunters alike, and is now surely one of the most dangerous railways around. Number 12. Kaaimans Bridge, South Africa. The first curved bridge ever built in South Africa, the Kaaimans Bridge offers train travelers some gorgeous views over the Kaaimans River and has become a popular tourist attraction over the years. The bridge itself is 210 meters long and 36 meters high. Hitting those curves at such a high speed and with such a long drop can be pretty terrifying, especially with the bridge being 100 years old. Couple that with the fact that it passes over a major river and is susceptible to floods during certain times of the year, you definitely don't want to be on board when that happens. In fact, back in 2006, the railway was pretty badly damaged after heavy flooding and was in need of some serious repairs. And while now it's okay, another event like that is still very much a reality. Number 11. Death Railway, Thailand. With a name like Death Railway, what could possibly go wrong? The popular railway connects Thailand to Myanmar and was built primarily by POWs during the Second World War. So many workers died during its construction that it earned the name Death Railway. The railway eventually leads to a bridge that was actually the inspiration for the famous film The Bridge on the River Kwai. But what makes the bridge so dangerous is that it traverses through an incredibly lush yet dense forest. It also winds its way through the mountains and comes dangerously close to plenty of rock faces. Keep your hands and feet inside the vehicle at all times. Over the years, both the railway and the bridge have fallen into various states of disarray, but service still continues for anyone willing to risk it. Number 10. Salta-Polvorillo, Argentina. This famous train route in Argentina took 27 years to build and has a total of 13 bridges along the railway. But there's one bridge in particular that's become incredibly popular with tourists. The train has become known as the Train to the Clouds. That's because it rides the rails at an amazing 4,200 meters above sea level. Hope you're not afraid of heights for this one. The narrow track runs about 225 meters long, so once you start on it, there's no turning back. Connecting Argentina with the Chilean border in the Andes mountain range, this is the 5th highest railway in the world. Originally built for trade and economic routes, it's now used as a heritage railway that gives passengers a little bit of the nation's history with a bird's-eye view. If you're afraid of heights, then this one probably isn't for you, since when you look out the window, it'll feel more like you're in an airplane rather than on a train. Number 9. Georgetown Loop Railroad, Colorado. Built at the turn of the 20th century and traveling all through the gorgeous Rocky Mountains is the Georgetown Loop Railroad. Historically, the area was known for its high concentration of silver mines, and this railway was the only means of reaching them to claim your fortune. The railway closed in 1938, but has since been redone and reopened for tourists. Although there are some breathtaking views, the train passes over Devil's Gate High Bridge. And with a name like that, you better believe that this bridge is an incredibly narrow suspension bridge that will make you feel like one small tilt in the wrong direction will send you over the edge. To make things even more frightening and heighten the sense of danger, it's suspended 640 feet off the ground. And back during the bridge's heyday, there was access for brave adventurers to walk across it. Although there have never been any incidents since its creation, it's still a pretty harrowing drop. Number 8. Devil's Nose, Ecuador. The Nariz del Diablo, or Devil's Nose, is a railway that lives up to its name. The Ecuadorian government built this zigzag of a railway along 500 meters of some pretty crazy hills and rock faces known as the Condor's Eyrie. It's easily one of the scariest train rides in the world. This Devil's Nose was constructed almost 3,000 meters above sea level, and there are 0 side guardrails to protect the train and the passengers, many of whom ride on top of the cars. The route also has a lot of switchbacks, meaning the train will go up the mountainside only to come back down and then go back up again. Although it's complicated, it was the only way for engineers to get the train through the insane route in one piece. And you know that a train this dangerous to ride is going to be especially, if not more dangerous, to build. It took about 4,000 workers to construct, and unfortunately, half of them died building it. But despite the morbid history and risk of bodily harm, the Devil's Nose is still one of Ecuador's most popular and dangerous tourist attractions. Number 7. White Pass and Yukon Route, Alaska, United States. Once used as a railway for miners during the lucrative Klondike Gold Rush, the White Pass and Yukon Route in Alaska, United States, will take you along a beautiful but terrifying route. To get to the gold in the Yukon, miners took the train on a 915-meter climb up the mountains in about 3 hours. And while being more than 900 meters high in the snow-capped mountains may be visually appealing for some, many travelers had to put their fear of heights aside in hopes of striking it rich in the early 1900s. And if you think building this treacherous railway was easy, then think again. It took plenty of manpower and ingenuity to build this modern marvel. Workers would hang from ropes along the mountainsides, drilling small holes into the rock face. Then the next crew would climb up and place dynamite inside to blast the mountains apart. And since they were still building the train, this meant that the workers had to make the climb by horse. And many of the horses died on the way up, leaving their riders to traverse the snowy and perilous mountain range on foot. The train route is still in use today, ensuring that none of their work was done in vain. Number 6. Pilatus Railway, Switzerland. The Swiss countryside, it offers some of the most beautiful views in the world with its rolling green hills, often snowy peaks, and of course, that crisp Swiss mountain air. But if you really want to get to the best views, then it's going to come at a pretty steep price, literally. Commissioned in 1889, the Pilatus Railway in Switzerland lets you ride the rails 2,100 meters above sea level. And with a gradient of 48% throughout, it's the steepest cogwheel railway in the world. The trip is a short one though, clocking in at around half an hour and taking you from Outeniqua to the Pilatus Clum. But with such an incline and its maximum altitude of over 2,000 meters, you'll be feeling like you're riding a roller coaster ticking its way to the top of the track. It travels tightly through the alpine cliffs and meadows on a very narrow track, which gives some riders a pretty claustrophobic feeling while on board. It's another railway where a tip in the wrong direction could spell disaster, but luckily there have never been any accidents in its 130-year history. But if you can stomach it, the Pilatus Railway does offer some pretty spectacular one-of-a-kind views of Switzerland in the summer. Number 5. Kuranda Scenic Railway, Australia. When it comes to the country of Australia, it would seem like there's no shortage of things out in the bush trying to kill you. From deadly spiders to poisonous snakes, even the occasional muscular kangaroo, it can be one scary place for anyone who doesn't have their wits about them. But some of the dangers can extend past Mother Nature and into the world created by us humans. The Kuranda Scenic Railway in Australia is not for the faint of heart. Known as one of the most dangerous train routes in the world, it does, however, boast some pretty spectacular views of the area. Passing through the UNESCO World Heritage Site, Barron Gorge National Park, it takes you all throughout the area's rainforests. Built in the 19th century, the Kuranda Scenic Railway takes passengers along the coast of Cairns on a 37-kilometer stretch for about 2 hours. But then why is the Kuranda Scenic Railway so dangerous? Well, the beauty comes at a price, and it follows along a cliffside with a serious drop and gets so close to the area's waterfalls that if the conditions are just right, then it doesn't take much for them to completely engulf the train in the water crashing from above. And if sitting in the tropical soak zone wasn't enough for riders, then they're treated to the 15 incredibly claustrophobic handmade tunnels in the mountains. And if that wasn't enough, the Kuranda Scenic Railway also just barely runs over a whopping 37 narrow bridges at about 328 meters above sea level. This railway is certainly one of the region's most popular and enduring attractions, but once you hit that first bridge, one look down and you may wish you never got on. Too bad there's no turning back. Best to just stick it out and get off at the next station. Number 4. Outeniqua Choo-Tjoe train, South Africa. Built over 100 years ago, the Outeniqua Choo-Tjoe train in South Africa was once considered to be the most extreme railway in the world. It takes passengers on a 3-hour ride between the popular cities of George and Knysna along a 67-kilometer route. That is one serious commute. What made this train famous, though, is that much of the railway is sat just above the rough waters of the Indian Ocean. So while it may be an important line, riding this train often came with a huge risk, because one bad storm or a bout of those nasty high winds would not only damage the tracks, but also completely engulf the train cars in seawater. Most people on board probably weren't looking to go for a dip when they bought a ticket. It must be absolutely terrifying to get on board during a sunny day, only to watch the sky grow grayer and grayer until the weather eventually takes a turn for the worse. By the time you make it to that long and fateful bridge, it's too late. But because of the route's multiple precarious locations, unfortunately, it was shut down permanently in June of 2009. And even though this thing may have been a scary 3-hour ride, I'm sure it will be sorely missed by many brave train enthusiasts who didn't mind laying it all on the line for a good story. Number 3. Cumbres and Toltec Scenic Railroad, United States. Colorado is home to a few dangerous railways, and the Cumbres and Toltec Scenic Railroad is no exception. Built back in 1880, this route travels through the cities of Chama, New Mexico, and Antonio, Colorado. The name of the railway really says it all, as it runs over the treacherous Toltec Gorge and then into the Cumbres mountain pass. But with that said, you can't let the name Cumbres and Toltec Scenic Railroad fool you, because while the route is incredibly scenic, it also takes the concept of a bird's-eye view and kicks it all the way up to 11. This railway rises higher than any other railway in the United States, so it's a big no-no to anyone with a crippling fear of heights. Or maybe it's the perfect route to help you conquer your fears with a little dose of exposure therapy all the way up there. Originally built to take miners into the mountain during the gold rush, this railway became defunct once the nearby mineral deposits had been depleted. No one taking the train to work meant no more money coming in. But as luck would have it, oil was discovered along the route in Farmington, and so the high-flying Cumbres and Toltec Scenic Railroad was given new life and treated a whole new generation of travelers to its jaw-dropping heights. The Scenic Railway line runs for about 103 kilometers and has become a popular spot for thrill-seeking tourists looking for views of winding gorges and mountains, and even the long drop below. Just remember to keep your arms and legs in the train car because it's a long way down. Number 2. Lynton and Lynmouth Cliff, UK. The Lynton and Lynmouth Cliff Railway in the UK looks more like a roller coaster than it does a train. Built in 1890, this railway passes through the incredibly high cliffs in between the towns of Lynton and Lynmouth. Surprisingly, and despite being built into the steep cliffs, it was built in just 3 years. Today, the railway offers 2 cars that fit up to a total of 80 people, and while it may offer a proper commute for many people because of the scenery, it feels more like a theme park ride. The train cars move up plenty of steep gradients, so they have to move at an especially slow pace, slower even than a trolley. But since the railway is built into the mountains, you can be sure to see some breathtaking views, including over the edges of the cliffs. It's the type of railway where once things start going, it's tough to actually enjoy the view because your stomach has somehow found a way to lodge itself in your throat. It may not be the most death-defying experience in the world, but it could very well fit in an amusement park. And so while the Lynton and Lynmouth Cliff is a popular tourist attraction, definitely worth a ride, just make sure not to look down unless you want to lose your lunch. Number 1. Minami Aso Route. While this train itself may not be dangerous, the path that it travels is certainly a perilous one. Along the way, the Minami Aso Railway in Japan passes through the base of an active volcano before reaching the Tateno Bridge, making for one potentially hot and explosive ride. Yeah, it's fair to say that the folks who ride this thing day in and day out are keeping their fingers crossed as they're passing through it. The Minami Aso Route rides over a wooden and steel bridge as well, and while it may be incredibly sturdy, that doesn't stop it from shaking, rattling, and squeaking as the train cars pass over it and the passengers look down at the giant body of water below. It does seem like the Minami Aso Route exposes anyone who rides her rails to all sorts of the elements during their morning commute. And while the bridge may offer an insanely gorgeous view, it's best not to look down if you're afraid of heights. And while the ride may be safe, the threat of earthquakes in Japan is still very real and can easily spell disaster for anyone on board going through the volcano and especially traveling over the Tateno Bridge at the wrong time. In fact, in 2016, parts of the track were damaged after the major earthquake that rocked the country. Watch our Vehicles playlist for more top 15 videos about amazing vehicles. Sit back, relax, and binge watch all of our best vehicle videos.